Hello and welcome back to the JLX podcast with me, your host, as always, Sander, and I am joined by the wonderful Gemma this afternoon or evening, wherever it is you are, or morning actually. It must be, what is it for you now?
It is. It's 11:15 in the
Quarter
morning for
past
me, so it's still the
11.
morning.
Fantastic. So there you go, wherever you are, whatever time it is, I hope you're having a good day. We have got Gemma on today. We are doing a series of podcasts with our team because they are some of the most amazing human beings you will meet, and you will fully understand exactly how much so by the end of this one, I am sure. And the truth is that for many people who listen to our podcasts, we get a lot of questions, we get a lot of really nice comments and things like that. And the truth is that many people who are on our team are where you are now, but the journeys are never simple. They're never one size fits all, and they are never very straightforward. And I think that for many people, it's nice to know that someone's walked the walk, and it's always nice to hear a bit about them as well. So, first and foremost, a very warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Can you tell the people just a little bit about yourself? It can be
Yeah.
anything at all, and if you leave your cats out, I'll be disappointed.
Okay, so they'll be disappointed too. So I'm Gemma. I am 30, married, living in California, so Southern California. Born and raised in the UK, traveled and worked across Europe. I've got two cats and a dog. Our dog is an American little puppy that we got when we moved here. And yeah, that's me. Oh,
Amazing.
and I said I'm 30, didn't I? So I'm 30,
You did.
married. Yeah, with the animals.
Perfect. Perfect. Also, the reason I actually brought up the cat was because this actually breaks me every time I think about it. It is actually so funny because Gemma's partner photoshopped a picture of her cat on her head. And it actually, if you're
That's
watching
all you
this,
think about when you think of
honestly,
me.
not joking. So obviously you don't post like a ton of stories on Instagram. So when you do, it comes up as like one of the first ones I should watch. And I'd be
Yeah.
lying if I said it wasn't the first thing I clicked on because I thought, oh, come on, be a photo, be a photo. It was honestly the first time I ever saw it. It actually broke me. Like I was just
A lot of my
laughing.
friends said that they didn't even see the cat on my head. And then they were like, we didn't really understand it. It wasn't until
Oh,
you looked at it again, there's like a small black cat over my head, like a hat. So yeah, he loves his
honestly, like
Photoshop.
it's actually it's actually making me like tear.
Yeah.
This is how much I loved it because he then didn't you send me like three more of like different
Yeah,
editions.
he did like three of them in total. So I don't get nice pictures from Edwin, not like Instagram worthy photos. It's usually edited, me looking some sort of all haggard. So yeah, all with cats edited onto my head. So no normal ones over here.
I'm gonna be honest, it was actually hilarious. So yeah, either way, it brings me joy every time you post a story, even if it's completely unrelated.
Yeah, that's just me. I
Oh,
should just change it to my profile picture.
yeah, and you should. That would actually be even better. You could change it on Slack, so when you message me on Slack,
Oh
I can see it.
yeah, maybe
That
I'll think
actually
about
would
that
be
one.
superb. That would be superb. So cats, that's definitely one part of this, but we have a really extraordinary journey to chat through. And
Mhm.
I said to Gemma before we came on, normally when I have somebody join us, I come loaded with questions. But this is a slightly different journey and a slightly different course in terms of a podcast, which hopefully you're going to enjoy because Gemma has an extraordinary journey. And I'm going to hand over to you now to kind of just talk people. I think if we go from the start, if you're following my drift, and then we'll carry forward. And I'm just going to pick up on it and ask you a few questions along the way, if that's all right.
Mhm. Yeah, cool. I won't start from birth, obviously, but growing up,
If you can remember that,
yeah.
be extraordinary.
So I was
Ah.
born at this time. So yeah, basically growing up, I was fit, healthy, like primary school, middle school, high school. I used to do lots of sports. So I do netball, hockey, football, things like that. And then get into around 14, 17, just dropped out of that, just became sort of typical teenager, hanging out with friends and stuff. And then around when I was about 16, 17, I didn't start feeling very well. So I was always pretty fit and healthy. If you were to look at me, I would just look like a typical teenager. No weight issues, no health issues. I started getting really poorly when I was about 17 in college. So I was going back and forth to the doctor. I could feel lumps in my neck. I was losing weight. I was really tired, couldn't really eat because things would make me feel sick. And I got turned away about 6 times over 6 months at the doctor's surgery. So I finally got a different doctor to see me. And she said, if these lumps hadn't gone down in your throat, then we'll send you to the hospital. So we got sent to the hospital, referred there for a biopsy, and ironically, what I was feeling, the lymph nodes were normal, but then they saw something else on the scan, which turned out to be Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I got diagnosed at 17, and then we started chemotherapy when I was 18, so about 2 or 3 months after. So they gave me a chance to finish college and sort of start summer and get that out of the way. So I went through 6 months of chemo, went into remission. That all went really smoothly. Didn't really have much effects from it. I was still able to socialize with friends, still went out and didn't have any problems. But throughout that stage, I was obviously eating really unhealthy before having chemo. So I was eating like 2 McDonald's a day, 2 large Domino's pizzas on a weekend. I could eat it all and not put any weight on because of the
Mm,
cancer. So then when I started chemotherapy, I carried on eating like that and I didn't know anything about nutrition. So I put on a lot of weight throughout the chemo. So when I finished chemo, I looked like a totally different person. So that was in 2012. I went back to work fairly soon after finishing chemo and everything, and life just carried on. And then I got a job abroad working as a ski rep. So a lot of drinking, a lot of partying. Again, not living a very healthy lifestyle and sort of giving myself the uni experience that I didn't get at 18. So I
mm.
did that for a couple of years, and started feeling my neck again and sort of like a growth in my neck. But at that point, I wasn't small, I wasn't skinny, I was a lot heavier, and I didn't think anything of it. But it got to a point where it was just getting bigger and bigger. So I had to go back to the hospital. So that was 2015. So then I was then diagnosed again with Hodgkin's lymphoma. I went through 6 months of chemotherapy again, followed by a stem cell transplant with my own stem cells. So that was 2016. Went into remission and I've been in remission since then. So touch wood.
Hmm.
Been healthy since then. And then 2016 is where I went on to, right, you're stopping all the binge drinking, you're gonna start being healthy, you're gonna lose the weight. So then I went on to lose, I think I lost maybe 60 or 70 pounds, just through
Wow.
diet, no exercise, just watching what I ate and sort of calorie counting, albeit looking back, very low calories. So I wouldn't do it that way again. And then I went off and did one more ski season, a lot healthier, and
Mm,
then did a lot of skiing, got into outdoor activities, fell back in love with like exercise and looking after my body. And then that brought me to meet my husband. And then in
incredible.
2020, I met Lauren with JLX and joined you guys. Did a year with you, and then felt I had the tools necessary, got down again a little bit smaller with my weight, really happy. And then 3 years later, I'm back, just because it's gone up and down fitness and weight and stuff. And then here I am now today. So that brings me up to now.
You've lived so many lifetimes in such a short space of time.
I think so. I like to pack a lot in.
Not just in experience of what you've taken on in terms of the ski seasons and a lot of travel, but also
Yeah.
in what you've had to take on as well.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
it's really interesting because obviously we work with a lot of people who struggle with disordered eating and such like, and
Mm,
often it comes from pivotal times of life and the control they didn't have. So I didn't realize. So I knew about the second bout, and I said this to you before we started, didn't I? I didn't actually know about the first. So I this was news to me when we started this because I think if you'd have asked me before, I thought it was around 24, 25, but I didn't know
yeah.
about the your first one. So
Yeah, yeah.
one thing, so I've done my did like a GP referral qualification,
Hmm.
which basically is where, and they are starting in the UK now quite a bit more, but basically where qualified personal trainers essentially help in the health service to work with the rehabilitation process
Hmm.
of, I mean, it can be anyway, and you can specialize. So you go and do level four. So, for example, I've done a level four in mental health, and I've done one in, I actually pulled out of my cardiac. So I did a cardiac rehabilitation one. My mum
Hmm.
got taken very, very ill halfway through the middle of it. So I had to stop. But what was really interesting, and some of you might not understand this listening, so I'm mentioning this to add a bit of context.
Hmm.
One of the things that you get with cancer patients is the huge amount of weight loss. And so, actually, one of the things they were talking about, and we actually had a cancer survivor in my class when I was doing
Oh, okay.
the level 3 and the level 4, and they were saying, anything at all that they could eat to keep the weight on. So, like you said, double McDonald's, double Domino's, cream with
Yeah.
everything, cheese with everything. And so I think it's really important for those of you who don't understand, this wasn't some kind of off the rails mission to just
Hmm.
enjoy as much great food as possible. It is actually a
Yeah.
necessity, isn't it?
Yeah, that was before the chemo. The one thing I think there's a lot of misconception about as well is when people go on to have chemotherapy, a lot of people have it in their head the idea of someone with cancer being really sickly and skinny and tiny. But when I went onto steroids and then the chemo started
Mm,
working, I just ballooned. I was like a
yeah,
totally different person. If you were going to look at two pictures of me side by side, I was just totally not myself for like 3 or 4 years in that period between both of the bouts. So I think that's one misconception as well for sure was is that
yeah.
a lot of people struggle with their weight afterwards, which is what happened to me.
Do you think that's this is potentially ignorant, and I don't mean it to be, but do you think that's because people associate like older people with cancer? Because I know a few older people who've unfortunately passed from cancer, and
Mm,
the stereotype of that would be very thin
yeah.
in that
I
way. So
think
I wonder,
elderly struggle, don't they? Sometimes elderly struggle with eating as it is. So I
absolutely,
think, yeah. And then the news stories that you see of people that say do pass away, unfortunately, or sort of end their journey with it because they can't have any other options is that at that point then the weight has gone, so
yeah,
a lot of what you see in social media is the late stages,
yeah,
and not so much sort of those beginning stages when you start the steroids and when you get sort of so puffed up with all the fluids that you get
sure.
given, so you don't see that as much.
That's interesting then. So, do you? I mean, I'm assuming that given obviously your experiences, you may have also met other people in similar situations, or at least maybe follow them on Instagram. Is that something that
Mhm.
many people struggle with in
I
terms of
met a
weight
few
management?
people. Yeah, I met a few people in hospital. So I did make friends through groups on social media and Facebook, and I still keep in touch with those people today. A lot of them, I don't think it was as much weight gain as I was, but I did see other sort of teenagers in the ward because it was Teenage Cancer Trust ward that I got treated on both times. That looked very similar to me, but I
Mm,
wasn't really aware of them, and it wasn't somewhere that I felt comfortable making friends at that
sure.
time. So I think a lot of people do struggle with it too. You just don't see it as much, that side
No.
of things.
I think just off what you said earlier as well, you mentioned that you had a blog and you
Hmm.
obviously blogged through this, which I can imagine was very supportive and kind of cathartic, at least for yourself. Do you think that because you mentioned that the first time you didn't blog and the second
Mm.
time you did, do you think that because you kept it to yourself the first time, do you think that maybe other people have done the same in terms of their body shape and things, which as I'm saying this, I'm thinking it makes even more sense why we shouldn't be judging people for their
Mm.
appearances because you really have no idea what goes on
Yeah.
behind closed doors.
Yeah, I think so in a way. I think as a like a female going through it when I was 17, I was more so, like it seems silly now saying it the word, but being embarrassed. Because obviously your hair is like a big part of your identity as a teenage girl or any age, really man or woman.
Mm,
So I think I was just more embarrassed of it, and I also just didn't want the pity. Like I'm not somebody that wants handouts or I struggle to accept help a lot of the time. Anyone you speak to will say that even in work settings. So I just didn't want the to make a big deal out of it, to be fair. But then the second time I realized, you know what, I want to talk about it, and like educate people on it because people just like you said, imagine elderly, frail people, not teenagers and young adults that
mm,
shouldn't have to go through it.
yeah, 100%. I can only imagine in these situations how much the difference between going through it at 18 was and then obviously early mid 20s. Did it
Mm.
feel different from a mentality
Mm.
perspective in that?
I think so, yeah, because it was only a few years later, and I know in the country that I live in now, a 21-year-old is still seen as a child, but in the UK, I think we're a lot more older mentally at 21 to 23. I think within 2 or 3 years, I did grow up a lot.
Mm,
So I wasn't really ashamed of it anymore. So I was like, I'm
yeah.
going to talk about it and try and educate others. So I did. I think I no, I don't think I told you actually before we started. So I did the Victoria Derbyshire show to talk about
Ah.
misdiagnosing young adults and children,
Mm,
because the gentleman that was also on had lost his daughter that was a similar age. So I was really passionate about it. So I think that goes to show I was sort of advocating
yeah.
for getting those diagnoses, because it was so frustrating the first time when I was 17.
I can't relate to any of the cancer side of treatments, but I
Yeah.
can relate to misdiagnosis. And do you know, one of the things I think is so difficult is when you're so young, I feel that it's not patronizing is the wrong word, but when you've got someone who is very much older and very much more experienced
Hmm.
telling you with definitive, like,
That you're
no,
fine.
this, yeah, I
And you're like, no,
actually,
I'm not.
yeah, and the thing I know I struggle with, mine was just a knee at the end of the day, but the thing I struggle with was like, I'm going fucking mad. I'm obviously
Yeah.
losing the plot because I know what I'm feeling and I know what I should be feeling,
Hmm.
but the professional is telling me that that's not happening. That's wrong,
Yeah.
and it leads to absolute delusion. And
Yeah. It drives you crazy.
I mean, I can obviously speak on behalf of myself, but mine's not half as threatening, for want of a politer term, as
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah, I think everybody's heart is different though as well. And obviously, if it affects your mental health, that can be just as detrimental as a physical thing for some people. So, yeah, I think it'd be difficult for anybody, no matter what you're fighting, to get diagnosed with.
Mm. No, I do agree with that. I do agree with that. Um, which is interesting actually, because I always, and any of my clients listening to this, I am a massive advocate for this is actually something you might have experience with as well. I often end up getting on calls with clients who are having meetings with consultants to help them with their questioning process because
Hmm.
I think that a lot of people are so excited about getting an answer or an appointment for that answer that often we get a bit glazy eyed and we're like, okay, cool, like that sounds fine. Whereas it's so important to question professionals because
Hmm.
they can only go off what they know and what you and probably 50 other people may have told them. And
Yeah,
sometimes that professional isn't the right one for you. And it's
no,
really
exactly.
important if you believe in what you're feeling or felt or anything in between those things to get a second opinion because what do you have to lose by not doing that?
Hmm.
So um, I'm sure for you that's a big part as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I saw the same guy for 6 months and then went back. And on the final time, I saw a different doctor, and she was the one that listened to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, after that, it was fine because I got told I had glandular fever, I had a UTI, I got told all these different things what the cancer was when it wasn't. So yeah, very frustrating.
Wow.
So,
So
but yes,
I mean, incredible. And it goes without saying, but I'm incredibly grateful for you for sharing that. So thank you so much
yeah, no
for
problem.
being brave and talking about on here. And the next then stage. So you spoke about ski seasons. What drew you to
Mhm.
ski seasons?
So the reason I did the first ski season was because I wanted to go to Magaluf, Ibiza, do the rep in
Peter.
there. Yeah, so I never actually ended up going
Hang on
there,
a
which was
second. Hang
I'm
on a
really
second.
happy
You've
with.
gone from two very warm countries. I'm assuming the skiing
Exactly.
is not so much.
No, I was never meant to ski. I was never meant to get into skiing or winter sports. So after I had chemo the first time, I wanted to go away and travel. I couldn't get a job as a rep because I had no experience. So kept getting turned down. So I applied for a hotel host with Crystal Ski, so TUI. And I got the job with Crystal Ski. So I thought I'm going to learn to snowboard. That looks cool. I'll hopefully
Yeah.
be good at it. I wasn't. So I was never great at snowboarding, but I did a couple of seasons of snowboarding, and I was hoping that would lead to Ibiza or somewhere like that, and it didn't, and I'm glad it didn't because that's what made me really enjoy ski season, and I was like, absolutely love it. So the second time I got diagnosed, I thought, you know what, I'm 20, 23. A lot of people are usually early 20s, late teenage years. I thought, I'm just going to do it again. I'm going to go back. I want to do it. Escape to the mountains, had to go through all that shit again. So I'm
Yeah.
going to do it. So got myself a job back where I'd worked previous, where me and mum go skiing every year now to this day. and went and did that, and I just fell in love with it. I just think the mountains are such an escape from normality, and I think now I live where I live, I can do that after work on a weekday, and I can plan going camping on a weekend. So I just find it so therapeutic and so good for my mental health being outdoors. So who knows if I'd have found that had I not had chemo, because I wasn't a
Mm,
outdoorsy person before. And I definitely wouldn't be sat here today if I hadn't gone through it. I wouldn't have met Edwin.
yeah.
So
Y-
yeah,
y-
I guess things
What you've just
happen.
said has riled about 30 questions for me because
Yeah.
the thing obviously you missed out of your introduction
Hmm.
is the thing you're passionate about now,
Oh yeah, I
right?
didn't mention that.
No, but that's
Yes.
just added up to so much because
Yeah.
obviously one of the main reasons that we spoke about when we first started working together this time around was
The
oh,
skiing.
was the skiing.
Yeah, the skiing. So, obviously, when I found out I was going to move to California, the first thing I did was get on the internet and find out what I could do with skiing in the area, find out the best ski resorts and what I could get to. So I actually put a call in 2022 to the ski patrol in this area, and got myself on their radar. When I got to America, I couldn't get a job in recruitment because of my experience with UK law. So I went into retail, which meant I couldn't do the ski season and the ski patrolling because I couldn't get the time off. So I thought, right, this isn't for me. I'm going to have to find a way to enable myself to get back to doing that and volunteering. So I then went back and started working remotely for my UK company, who I absolutely love. And they trust me and put all their trust in me to do this job remotely for them, which has enabled me to go after ski patrol. So I was going to do search and rescue and ski patrol. I got offered both, but the organizations, it's too much commitment. So I went with my passion, and I'll be doing ski patrol next year. So I start my emergency outdoor medical training this summer. So I'll be doing that on weekends and on the mountain.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is why I love these conversations because obviously I know about the ski patrol element of things
Hmm.
because that's something we talk about a lot. And you also send me lovely photos, which is amazing,
Yeah,
of the mountains as they are. But now I'm starting to piece together all the magic of this journey
yeah.
that was never the aim. So
No, it's been
if
in process since like 2012 that I just didn't know that that was going to happen, or I'd end up in this country, or having, because you can't do it in England. You haven't got a ski patrol in England. So the fact that I've ended up here, I'm just so grateful, like so
yeah,
grateful for doing it. So yeah, it's all sort of
oh,
intertwined and worked.
absolutely amazing. I love how a journey that could have been so damning and irrespective of the fact that you've come through it, there are some people who never fully recover, I think,
Mm,
mentally, and it depends on the
yeah.
individual you are. Because for some people, it is just too much in terms of, the mental elements of things. But, you know,
Hmm.
I know you pretty well and you're a warrior through and through. And like you said, it was never going to be, at least from what I can see, never something that's defined you, but something that's
No,
almost for
no,
want of a
definitely
better
not.
term, pushed you into a wonderful direction of life, and you've capitalized on that.
Yeah, I think so. And like you said, I don't like it defining me. I'm not somebody that likes, and each to their own. I respect everybody's decision. I'm not somebody that likes to, say, for example, get a tattoo with the cancer ribbons. I have a tattoo for my experience, but it's star signs and there's a meaning
Mm,
behind it, which I don't need to go into, but
yeah,
I know what that tattoo means. I don't like showing the ribbons. I don't want people to associate me with it.
yeah.
Um, and I like it's things like that. I don't want it to define me. But I do appreciate that some people will have had a lot worse physical reactions from chemo and mental health reactions, which means that they might struggle more than I had. So I'm really grateful that I got through it not scot free, but at least sort of less unscathed than other people. So I'm
Mm.
definitely grateful for that as well.
100%. And you've gone on to, you know, one of the things we often talk about within the whole team really is seeing what your body is capable of doing. And I
Hmm.
think it's one of the greatest celebrations of life. Just from my personal perspective, I think one of the greatest things human beings can do is explore what their minds and bodies are capable of doing because you
Yeah.
only get one of them. And
Hmm.
I think that sometimes some of us are given a bit of a wake up call in the sense
Hmm.
of that gets taken away and then you're like, well, fuck. What
Yeah, I
now?
definitely don't think the first time I had it was a wake up call, because I carried on living quite an unhealthy lifestyle on my ski seasons and outside of them. In the second time, that was definitely my wake up call, and I thought, you know what, I want to take the skiing further, and I want to make the most out of it, and that's why the health and fitness became
Hmm.
so important to me. So yeah, I definitely think second time was my wake up call for sure.
That's really interesting. The reason I think that's interesting is obviously your first one was at a very pivotal point. You mentioned at the
Mm,
very beginning that you kind of wanted that university lifestyle, I think you said.
yeah,
And I don't think
exactly.
anyone can blame you for wanting that, given the time and the time of your life, obviously that was.
Hmm.
Um, do you think though that like with a compassionate lens on that actually that was just extended, or do you think that it was just more you didn't know how to live a healthy lifestyle at the time and
Yeah, probably. I didn't have a clue. Looking back when I did the summer season in between my first two ski seasons, I always say when we're out hiking now, we used to have to do guided walks and guided hikes, and my clientele was anywhere from like 20 to 60, 70-year olds going to the lakes and mountains. And I used to show up to those hikes hungover, probably still drunk, marched them up the mountain to get it over with as quick as I could because I didn't want to be there. And I just look back and I think, oh, I just want to shake myself. That would be my perfect holiday now. And I would kill to go back and do guided hikes and do that with people. So, yeah, I think it was just a bit of immaturity and just not quite there yet. But I guess that's hindsight, isn't it? And it's where you grow up.
I think I mean I look at most people's journeys and the thing is that you actually did make a very transformative step going forwards in terms
Hmm.
of I think whether it was the skiing that pushed you more in that direction or just that snap decision that's like, right, this isn't okay anymore. And
Hmm.
for those of you who've listened to kind of any of my journey, that was literally what happened one day. I was just like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, and no. This is not me. This can't continue, and I need to do something different now. And it
Yeah,
was literally
definitely.
like that. And that's how my kind of life into fitness began. I think that though there's a very big difference between having the idea and then saying, I
Hmm.
need to commit to a new me. I need to
Yeah,
commit to a new
definitely.
me. And I know that I think for me, I don't know if this is the same for you, so obviously disagree. But I feel
Hmm.
like at the time I was living a life that was just not coherent with me as an individual.
Hmm.
And I think it got to a point where that got to a head where I was like, this just feels I feel like I'm in an out of a body experience and
Hmm.
I now need to get myself back to who I am and kind of who I want to be. And that's when my kind of fitness journey really took off, obviously post rugby and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, so do you feel like that was similar for you, or did you feel like it was kind of wading into the unknown a little bit?
I think it was just being so unhappy with because before I had the chemo, I was really my body image was really up there. I was happy with myself. I liked how I looked. I was really confident. And I just wasn't that person. When I turned 18 and put all the weight on and was on steroids, like those 3 or 4 years, when I look back at that's a different person. And when I show
Mm,
pictures of me back then, they're like, there's no way that's you. Because I just didn't feel like myself. I didn't look like myself. And when I had found out I relapsed, I was already in the process of starting to lose the weight that had to go on hold with everything else.
yeah.
So I think I just got fed up of not feeling like myself. And I just thought, enough's enough. I need to lose this weight. And then I'll look at doing fitness and stuff. And I think I just fell in love with the process. And having no control with having chemo and cancer has given me sort of maybe too much control with wanting to be on top of everything in every aspect of my life, which I don't see as a bad thing. I think that's what works for me. So I really
Mm.
enjoy the process.
To be honest, I think that's the best way. And there's obviously certain elements where having too or the need for too much control can be inhibiting. Inhibiting? Is that the right
Yes.
word?
Difficult
But
at times, yeah.
it can be. But I think the thing with you is that you're very reasonably minded. So
Hmm.
I find that I've spoken about this a little bit before, where people use the term control when what they really mean is obsession. So
Hmm.
when people say, "Oh, I really need to, I feel like I'm out of control," it's like, no, you just don't have the ability to be obsessed about that because someone's taken that out of your hands.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's if you actually change that in a lot of people's sentences, I obsess over this versus I control this, it
Hmm.
changes the dynamic of self-awareness quite a bit. But I don't see that in you because you're very reasonable when I say, "Oh, I think we should maybe try this, or maybe that would be a
Yeah.
better idea." Um, it's very logic based. So I feel like
Yeah.
for you, it is a very healthy level of control, not it doesn't control you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also like hearing it from other people's opinions, which is why I like doing the coaching, is because it's like having a sounding board of not just your own thoughts. It's always going to be better to get somebody else's opinion that's outside of your immediate circle. So
Mm.
yeah, I agree with that. It's a good way to look at it.
I imagine the check-in process for us is quite cathartic for you because if you like a sounding board, writing those things out, you'll probably start to answer a lot of your questions anyway, I imagine. Do you find yourself doing that?
What when I watch the
So
videos?
when you're writing it out or when you're
Mhm.
messaging, do you answer your own questions a little bit?
Yeah, I do because I normally give you examples where I say, "Oh, I've done this, but I know why I've done that,"
Yeah,
or "I've had this result, but I know it's because of this."
yeah.
So yeah, I definitely do. I do a lot of reasoning while I'm doing my check-ins.
That's entirely the reason we built it as we
Hmm.
built it. Because I find that journaling is very, very helpful, but not
Yeah,
everyone likes journaling. But equally, loads of us have the answers to other people's questions, but not the answers to our own. So it's very
yeah.
interesting when you make people write these things down. All of a sudden, they're like, I get messages pretty much every week from people saying, look, ignore the mood I was in when I wrote my check-in yesterday. I've just reread it. I don't
Hmm.
feel that bad.
Yeah, that's understandable. I also think it's good to like, I always say to my mum or friends and family, if I'm in a bad headspace or if they are, I'd say, is that what you, so say if I said that to you, a negative thing about myself, would you tell me the same thing? Like, would
Yeah,
you berate me for feeling like that? So I'm not going to do it to yourself, if that makes sense.
yeah.
So I try and talk to myself the way I would my friends and family to keep sort of those negative um sentences or thoughts out of the equation, basically. And I try and tell that to other people as well when they're dealing with it.
Absolutely. And people listening to this on our team will hear me say this all the time. You wouldn't speak to your best friend like that. So there's,
No.
you know, I think that there's a I don't agree with everything he says, by the way, and he's gone a little bit off the rails these days, but a few years ago I read Jordan Peterson's book on 12 rules for life. And I think it was his eighth rule. One of my favorite things, and I will remember this always. His eighth rule was treat yourself like somebody you are responsible for. And he goes on to talk about how people treat their cats better than they treat themselves, or they treat their children better than themselves. And it's absolutely true. If your
Yeah.
cat needed to go to the vet, you would pick that thing up, it would go in a crate, and it would be going to the vets
Yeah,
ASAP.
definitely.
Whereas if we take that in ourselves, there's so many people who aren't doing things that would really benefit them because they're not treating themselves like they are somebody they are responsible for. And the same
Hmm.
thing goes with how we speak to ourselves. I don't walk downstairs, look at my cat and go, "You're fucking stupid." No, do you know what I mean?
No, the poor thing.
It'd probably just start meowing at me.
He'd probably be like, says you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So with
Get
the
up on
cat's
the
attitude. Yeah.
yeah, get up on the sofa and claw me in the arm.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. We'll
and I
save the
think that
comment for later at night time, waking you
yeah,
up.
exactly. Headbutt me at 3 a.m. Right then, we'll see who's winning this battle. Um, So the next thing I wanted to quickly touch on was starting again. So obviously you worked
Yeah.
with us for a year, and then
Hmm.
this is, by the way, something a lot of people do: start, end, break, start.
Yeah.
And I guess if you had some lessons that
Yeah.
you have learned from that, or things you could impart on maybe other people, what would they
Hmm.
be?
So when I was with you guys in 2020, so I was really happy. I'd gone through, got lost the weight that I wanted to lose, learned how to exercise properly because I'd lost the weight from just diet before. Um, really happy with how it went. And then I got to a stage of doing a reverse diet. I felt like I knew what to do and that I could finish that reverse diet on my own, implement my own stuff, and just crack on with it, which I couldn't because I had a big year. I think I finished around Christmas 2020 or 2021. I can't remember exactly. But then I had a visa process and the whole thing of moving to the States. So I think because I then finished coaching, I didn't have somebody to keep me accountable. And that was a really stressful year. I had really high stress, and Edwin was worried about me. And he always says that if anything's going to get me, it's my stress. So I need to get it under control. So I had a rough year with that, with worrying about everything. So I wasn't working out as much as I wanted to. I was still hiking, still going skiing, but I wasn't sticking to plans. I wasn't sticking to goals. I was sort of just bimbling my way through. I still kept the weight off. I would just yo-yo the same 10 pounds until 2023. So moved here, got myself around the same weight as well this time last summer. But then over Christmas, like we all do, I then went ham with drinking and eating and whatnot. So I then stopped working out again, no accountability, and I didn't really know what to do. And at that point over this Christmas is when I got the call for my ski assessment and search and rescue. And I realized that I can't keep doing that. I can't keep
Mm.
just bimbling my way through working out how to get to goals on my own. I do need that structure, and I need somebody's expert opinion and guidance, especially for the performance that I want to have next winter. So then that's when I started researching again. And you actually messaged me out of the blue, which was strange because it was exactly the time. It must have been mind reading.
Yeah.
Just popping a message across, and I was like, oh, actually, I do have some goals. And then I saw you were looking for new clients, so I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to message and have that conversation. And after our call when I was in England and we had the initial video chat, it just spurred me on. So I feel like I've just got such a passion and fire for my goals this year after that conversation that it just cemented it 100%. I need the coaching back to just enable me to get to where I want to and need to be. So that brings us here to where
It's
we're at
amazing.
now.
It's amazing. I always think that coaching is a really interesting thing, and especially the way that I like the way I see it, speaking completely honestly, like within reason, I don't really give a shit about the nutrition element or the training element of things if I cannot get someone to live their best life. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you can't get someone to enjoy what they are doing, training and nutrition really aren't high up on the priorities list of things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for me, if somebody is absolutely miserable but nailing their training and nutrition, that's not a good thing. I don't celebrate that, and I don't think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
What I find interesting is that so many people will join us, will go away and come back. And it's in those moments they'll go away. They won't necessarily say why they'll say a reason, but it won't be like, oh, I feel stressed as hell. Because
Mm.
I think, like from my perspective, that's when I can do my absolute best coaching. So for
Yeah.
me, when someone's like, "Oh, I'm absolutely stressed out my eyeballs," I think, right, this is where I start to do my job, because I do believe that for most of the time, you probably did know exactly what to do. You knew how to probably
Mm-hmm.
write your macros. You probably knew how to write a good training program, right? Because we give you all the notes. You have everything that we've ever given
Yeah.
you, so you could have formulated that. But sometimes I think it's not the accountability side of it. It's actually just the support. It's the, hey, look,
Yeah.
don't stress about this. I'll write it out. Just go do it. If you've got any issues, let me know. And so, equally, you might not have any issues, but the fact that if you do, there's support there, or if you do
Mm-hmm.
have issues, there's support there. I find that's a really great place to be with coaching.
Yeah.
And I also think that many people who've had coaches before, and I'm thinking of somebody here, and I know she'll agree with me, and I know she listens to this podcast, so I'll probably get a message. For the girl I'm thinking of here, where she went quiet on her last coach, they were just getting
Mm.
annoyed that they weren't doing the training and nutrition. Um,
Yeah.
but like for me, like I said, it's really important, and so going through this process now, obviously, I cannot explain to you people how many times you have written in your motivation box how excited you are, and it's a really great
Mm-hmm.
thing to see. Like that's phenomenal. Your training's been great. Your nutrition has been spot on. Obviously, the fitness that you've got now is, I think your running is much better than it was at this point last year, I think you were mentioning. So
Mm-hmm.
enjoying the process is so important. And I don't think enough people appreciate the importance that has over
Yeah,
the result they
definitely.
think they're going to get by being miserable. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah. I think so, yeah. And I always say to friends and family when they're saying about weight loss and wanting to start their own journeys, I definitely think it takes like at least a couple of weeks to get into that. Like some people aren't going to feel the same way I did day one, or even when they do the calls to join coaching. I definitely think it takes a week or two, or even three, to start enjoying it. And it's
Mm,
like I hate the saying because it's always all over Instagram, romanticizing your life. But romanticizing the process, I think, really helps. So, like, I have to get up at 5 a.m. every day and most weekends as well. I'll go out and walk Luna at 5:30, and then I'll come home, have a cup of coffee in the garden, and just sit and enjoy it because I really enjoy that aspect of my life. And I know that if I didn't get out of bed or walk her, I wouldn't have a positive start to my day. It's not always the case if it's raining. Sometimes I might not do that,
Sat in
but
the rain with your
it's
coffee.
just, yeah, exactly. But it is just those moments, and people might say, "Oh, you sat in California doing that," but I was doing that when I was in Watton and Same Tony in England. When I was with you guys in 2020, I'd be out in the garden having a cup of coffee and just enjoying the process of it. So yeah, it's just little things to make it enjoyable, and just swapping things around to, like, say, doing your steps, don't do them on the treadmill, go out and do them in nature because it's a lot more interesting. So yeah, I think that's my 2 cents worth in that respect.
I couldn't agree anymore. I think if enjoying the process takes you longer to do than nailing the process, I would much rather someone did the enjoying the process first, because once you
Yeah,
enjoy doing something, nailing it becomes so much easier. For
yeah,
example, not
definitely.
many people really like getting up at 5 a.m. If you ask me to get up at 5 a.m., normally speaking, I wouldn't be too
That's
chuffed.
because you're
However,
working at midnight most nights.
well, yes, that's true. But equally, I get up at 5 a.m. to go play golf. So when it's
Yeah,
something you love doing,
it's
it
worth it.
it's irrelevant. Like if you said to
Yeah.
me, "Oh, you need to get up at 5 a.m. and start hoovering," like I'd rather sleep on the floor in my garage than do that, to be
Yeah.
quite honest. But if it's golf, or if it's, doing something that I find thrilling and enjoyable,
Yeah.
get up at 4 a.m. if you need me to. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the same reason I work late. I work so late because I'm obviously doing something I really enjoy. And the same thing goes for this process. And it's really, really very helpful. So, to finish up, one of the things we spoke about at the very beginning before we jumped on here is I kind of said to you, look, what would you really like people to kind of take away from this? And we've
Hmm.
kind of spoken about, there's no shame in starting again. There's no shame
Yeah.
in coming back and actually kicking the journey on again because, well, for one reason, you've got new goals, you've got new opportunities, but equally, there's more to learn.
Hmm.
But the other thing you mentioned was don't limit yourself. And I wondered if you could just finish us off with a little bit about that, and kind of any words of advice you have for people who maybe feel like, take, for example, I have a few clients who have PCOS who maybe feel like the advice they've been given is very self-limiting. I have some
Yeah.
clients who have things like ME, where pain
Hmm.
and things like that is very self-limiting. But you are right. Do not limit yourself. And I'd just like you to
Hmm.
give your kind of 2 cents on that.
Yeah. So I think it's easy to sit here and say everything I've said now because it's 2024 and it's nearly 10 years ago since I went through it. So sometimes I might have my rose tinted glasses on and think that it was easier than it was in the time. Um, but I just don't want people to think because they have something that they think will stop them from achieving their goals, that there's ways around it and there's ways to work and combat against it. And there was a point when I was like 220 pounds and I couldn't stand up for a chest x-ray for more than 10 seconds because I hadn't got out of bed in a week and had no immune system, or like going through the bone marrow transplant. And now I'm deciding to look at the mountain outside my window and go hike for 6 hours and 20 kilometers at the drop of a hat on a Sunday morning. And I don't know why, because that's crazy. And sometimes I hate the process, but it's worth it in the end. But I just think people need to do stuff that makes you feel alive and that you're not wasting any time whatsoever, because life's so short. And if there is long lasting implications of health reasons and health issues, then take the time off and let yourself feel better, but then don't wallow in it. I think wallowing in stuff and sitting in self pity is the worst thing you can do. And I allow myself 1 or 2 days to do that. But obviously, if it's a real mental health issue, you can't just snap out of it. But if it's not and it's just self pity, don't sit in it because that'll just stop the process and you won't reach your goals. But anyone can do anything they put their mind to, especially if they've got the help and the support like you guys do with coaching, or if they've got their friends and family. So yeah.
Love that. You know what? Listening to you say these things, it literally reminds me of a lot of the things that I talk through with people. And obviously, experiences shape the places and the things that we think and feel now. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing I literally spoke, so at the end of the podcast I did last week on PCOS, I literally said very similar things, in that just because you have something that is limiting doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that you should limit your options, doesn't mean that you
Yeah.
should not try, because the truth is you lose nothing for trying.
Mm-hmm.
And in trying, you gain a lot of things. You gain self-confidence, you gain self-esteem. And just like you did, you gained a sport that's become a lifestyle for you because
Yeah.
you did all those things. And I do generally believe you never know what sits on the other side of a lot of hard work.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think that a lot of people, and it's sad that a lot of people miss that opportunity because they've been told something and they've gone, well, that's it for me then, because, I have this and that means I can't do that.
Yeah.
But what can you do? What can you
Yeah.
do? What can you do? And what can you shoot for? Just because maybe the goals you previously had are no longer accessible, set some new
Yeah.
ones. Go hunt those
Yeah,
down.
exactly. Life's too short. You've got to do it. You've got to put a goal in front of yourself and work towards it. I think always having a goal is what keeps you going. I think if you haven't got a goal in mind, just something to achieve, I just don't like sitting stagnant. So might be different for some people, but that's one thing I'd recommend is always have a goal.
Everyone needs a North Star.
Yes,
Gemma,
exactly.
thank you ever so much. Thank you for sharing a wonderful and challenging story. Thank you
My
for being here
pleasure.
with me today. And it's just been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
The pleasure is all mine. Folks, thank you as always for watching or listening. I really do appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me. And I'm sure if I send them on to Gemma, if this is something that you're struggling with at the moment, I know she's a massive advocate for helping with this. And I'm sure she wouldn't mind if I pass them on. But for now, thank you ever so much for listening. Take good care and bye.